Good evening, Chatham-Kent. Good evening. My name is Philip Mock, and I'm the project coordinator for the Chatham-Kent Prosperity Roundtable. I'm hoping you're all able to hear us and come together tonight to watch an hour-long session. We're going to be doing a conversation with a variety of different people. We're here tonight because we're discussing the partnership between Hope Haven and Employment and Social Services with the municipality to bring a housing program to the center of Chatham, where they're able to work with people who are experiencing homelessness or who are unable to access housing and housing services and supports. We have a good team joining us this evening. We have Inspector Michael Pierce with the Chatham Kent Police Services. We have Josh Myers, a program manager with Employment and Social Services. We have Polly Smith, Director of Employment and Social Services. And of course, we have Lori Bailey, who's the General Manager of Hope Haven. The goal tonight is to hear from you. We are going to be doing a little bit of a discussion to begin, but we want to hear your concerns, your questions, and even your solutions. We're here listening to you. Josh, it sounds like you have a presentation. Welcome, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Phil. Can you go to the next slide? And thanks to everyone that's been able to tune in tonight. We'll also be having this conversation tomorrow at noon. But what I'd like to start with is some quick background on emergency housing and what's currently taking place in Chatham-Kent and what's gone on throughout the pandemic. Discuss a little bit more about the partnership, but then, of course, get quickly to the questions, concerns, and feedback. So next slide. The municipality is currently delivering the Emergency and Rapid Rehousing Program to provide those in need with safe overnight accommodations with 24/7 staff that are trained to assist people in connecting with the services that they need. This program was created in response to the pandemic as homelessness in the community has increased significantly. Our lease is expiring and we do not have the provincial funds to continue this program in a similar size. Next slide. The Emergency and Rapid Rehousing Program has made a meaningful difference. We've been able to help 130 people into housing directly from an emergency housing bed. 75% of those are still housed after 6 months. 499 people who were previously homeless have been housed through CK Cares programming throughout the pandemic. Despite the success, the need for emergency housing remains high. Every month, new people fall into homelessness while others are helped to return to housing. Right now, we are seeing up to 6 new households fall into homelessness every single week for the first time. And with the closure of the travel lodge and limited affordable motel rooms, many will have nowhere to go. Next slide. Next slide. All of Ontario, including Chatham-Kent, is experiencing a housing crisis. Housing is becoming more expensive and harder to find. In Chatham-Kent, we are seeing a low vacancy rate of 1.2%, while in 2019, it was 2.9%. Rent is increasing while incomes are stagnant. Social assistance has not changed since 2019, and at that point, it was a very minor increase. The average market rent of a one-bedroom unit is up to 66% since 2015. And we know that this year, looking at average market rents, that it's higher than what we're seeing in 2021. The housing crisis is contributing to the increased need for emergency housing. Since December of 2019, we are seeing approximately 150% increase in homelessness. 722 unique people experienced homelessness between April 2020 and October of 2021. On average, about 200 people have nowhere to stay each night. Next slide. Fortunately for the community, Hope Haven, who previously delivered an emergency shelter in Chatham-Kent, has advised that they intend to reopen their overnight shelter. During the pandemic, Hope Haven continued to serve the community by delivering much-needed day programming and overnight warming centers throughout much of the last 2 winters. ESS has experience in delivering housing-focused programming, while Hope Haven has experience in operating a shelter, and they own a building that is close to many of the services that those in need use. We know that doing nothing will only make the situation worse. So instead, the municipality is seeking council approval to partner with Hope Haven to assist them in delivering a program that is focused on ending people's homelessness. The work is difficult, and although Hope Haven plans to deliver this needed service with or without municipal support, we both believe that we will have stronger outcomes by working together. A housing-focused shelter is a place that homeless individuals can come and access a safe place to sleep, but also the services that they need to return to housing. This is not a free hostel, and those who access this will be attached to community supports who will develop individual case plans to help improve the person's situation. If someone is not interested in working with services, then this will not be a program for them. Our long-term goal remains to not have a shelter, which is one of the reasons why we have not pursued building one. That's not to say that emergency housing will not be needed in the future, because it will, but we remain hopeful that with new affordable housing builds, like that of Indewell, these will provide much needed resources that will reduce the need for emergency housing, and at which time we can return to relying on local motel rooms. Now, although today's focus is emergency housing, we know that we need to continue to develop and deliver both prevention programming and affordable and supportive housing programs to see real impact in the community. We know that there are concerns with the number of potential beds in this proposal. Our reality is we do not have, nor have we ever had, enough resources to meet the need in the community. Despite the high need, we are expecting to have a homeless prevention budget reduction of over $3 million for this year. This funding was previously used to fund our current programming, so without it, difficult decisions have had to be made. Given this reality, we are pursuing a number of programs to address homelessness and housing precarity for a variety of needs. In addition to the emergency shelter, we are working to deliver a new transitional housing program for those interested in improving their job readiness and life skills. Chatham-Kent has also seen an increase in family homelessness, and given the shortage of available motel rooms, we are pursuing service agreements in order to prioritize families for what rooms are available. As difficult as this is to say, we have made decisions that we hope will prevent children from having to sleep outside or in vehicles in this coming year. The number of people in our community facing the grim prospect of having nowhere to live is growing, while the resources to address the problem are shrinking. We do not have another option, and without these services, we can expect to see visible homelessness in 10 communities become more prevalent. Hope Haven has advised that they are committed to filling the gaps in the community with or without municipal support. We believe, however, that it is in the best interest of everyone in the community for us to work together so that this needed program is a pathway back to supports. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that the community doesn't have concerns with this, fears and questions, which is why we're here tonight. We want to open up the floor to the questions that you have, and we're going to do our best to answer them. For questions that we don't have answers to, we are committed to take them back. There are many operational decisions that have not been made and things for us to consider. This is the step one of a plan that we hope will be approved, but we'll take many further steps to develop and input from a variety of stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Phil.
Josh, thank you very much for the great presentation. It's really important that we start any conversation with some of the facts of what's going on in our community. A lot of times, even the people who are working in the field don't even know some of the issues going on. I mean, that 1.2% vacancy rate. Just before we move on to some further questions with the rest of the panel, that 1.2%, give me a better quantifier of that. So when you say 1.2% vacancy rate, what does that look like each month?
It's a great question. So it really does vary. So what I can with maybe 20 people that they're trying to find housing for, and they'll go on to Kijiji, and they might find 3 listings for that month or the upcoming month, and that's one case manager. When we have several working in a variety of programs trying to find these listings, it very much varies. But what that has really meant across our programming is we used to be very much focused and proud of our Housing First programming. Housing First is been proven time and time again to show measurable impacts on ending homelessness. But with a vacancy rate of 1.2%, it's very difficult to be housing first when the housing's not available. So we are, unfortunately, we're seeing that people are remaining homelessness longer. And the longer that someone is homeless, the sicker that they become.
Very well said. And actually, this leads really, really well into a viewer question that just popped up for us. They're asking, is the growing homelessness need in this community and people who are experiencing poverty, is it due to a lack of housing, available housing, or is it really due to a lack of money? It's a big question, but I think it's an important one to answer.
It's a great question. So I'm going to take a stab at that. Homelessness in general, it's very difficult not to stereotype it and to put everybody into one basket. What I can certainly say is that what we have seen is affordability and the lack of income, they go hand in hand. So for example, for if you're a single individual in Ontario works, your total monthly income is going to be about $738. Now that's to feed you, clothe you, and put a roof over your head. With average market rent of $1,050 minimal, so the math doesn't work. And that's not including the utilities that fall into that. So what we are seeing a lot of, now that we're seeing new families fall into homelessness for the first time, and that number going higher, the alarm bells are certainly going off. And what I can share is when I speak with colleagues from other municipalities across the province, this isn't an isolated Chatham-Kent issue. I'm sure viewers at home, any newspaper and TV broadcast, radio story, homelessness and the housing crisis has become front page and regular because of the costs that have increased.
It is that kind of we've gone to a place, and not just Chatham-Kent, but across the country, where it's not only a lack of available housing, but it's also a lack of money. It's both kind of at this point. We just, as you were mentioning, with 1.2% vacancy rates, we just don't have enough housing in general, or even rentals to get people housed. But even when there are available, the rental rates or the cost of rent has just skyrocketed in this community. And that's not just Chatham-Kent, that's across the board. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. I mean, no, watching from Jeff and you and rents that we used to see. This job has always been difficult. The case managers that are searching for housing and seeking that, it's never been an easy task, and we're proud of the work that we do. But with the rents at the levels that they're at, it continues to become closer to impossible on some days.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now we have some more viewer questions coming in here, Josh, and I'm wondering, why don't we invite Polly and Lori to come and join us here if we could? And Polly, Lori, before we jump in to some further viewer questions, I'd like to just reiterate something that Josh said. I think was really important point. The partnership between Employment and Social Services and Hope Haven is a housing program. I think sometimes we might assume it's just a shelter, but it's a shelter plus plus plus. There's a lot of supports and services attached to this. Paul, I'm going to turn to you first before I go to Lori. Paulie, tell us a little bit about what services Employment and Social Services is bringing to the table in this partnership.
So I think I'd sort of like to focus on, why don't we have, why haven't we had a homeless shelter and why haven't we funded that in the past? And then I can
Sure.
get there. So the reason has been that we've had. So there's sort of three reasons. One was lack of funding. So our homeless prevention funding is what helps us keep people housed when they get into a rent arrears problem, hydro, gas arrears, those kinds of situations, or when they have to move and they need last month's rent. So it's really important that we have funding available for that, or homeless people keep falling into homelessness. So a lot of our work is preventing homelessness. Um, the other, but there has been limited funds for the whole community of Chatham-Kent. So that's for every town and rural area of Chatham-Kent. With the Social Services Relief Fund, we saw a boom, sadly, in homelessness, but we also got funding far more than we receive on an annual basis to assist with that and assist in the community. So we didn't have money for shelter before. We had more limited homelessness, but certainly we had it. A lot of couch surfing homelessness, so hidden homelessness. And so we used that funding very carefully. And when we needed a place for people to stay, we used motels. Well, during the pandemic, that became, um, less of a possibility. So that's kind of some of that background. But the range of services is, first we focus on housing, is helping people get housed, but we also would pull in, we have people that help people stay employed or find work. We have people to our case managers assist with income maintenance, so social assistance if people are eligible for that or they need certain things. Um, not just for housing, but for daily living. And then we work with partners like Hope Haven, but also partners in health. Particularly, we've been working very closely in at our current location at Travelodge with the community health centers for a lot of physical health things. We work with Canadian Mental Health Association with more of the emotional side, mental health, and substance use issues. So there's there's a lot of things that go with that. But we have had a housing first philosophy, and we will continue that despite the challenges in the market.
Paul, I'm really glad you actually kind of cut through my questions. Started out with why don't we have a permanent homeless shelter in this community? And I think your points are well taken that it's best if we can try and help individuals stay housed and get housed really, really quickly, rapidly, so they're not having to stay at a shelter for long periods of time. Absolutely. And I thank you for sharing a little bit more about some of the services that are going to be in partnership with Hope Haven. And as viewer questions are coming in, why don't we invite Lori back into the conversation? Lori, thank you so much for joining us as well. Turning it over to you before we, and I think this is a question that might tie into everything we've discussed so far, Lori. A viewer question that's come forward is one theme in the questions that this person is reading through in the comment section is that some of the patrons of downtown have fears or concerns around being approached by individuals. How can this concern be addressed if there are now more individuals downtown?
Um, Thanks, Bill. That's a great question. And when people hear what I do, they ask me similar types of questions. People ultimately are afraid. And I'm going to tell you that I'm also a resident of Chatham-Kent, and I don't want to be afraid when I go shopping, and I don't want to have fear either. I think that I would say we need to first of all think about we want to have a vibrant downtown community. So that means, just by virtue of that statement, that we're going to have more people downtown, right? That's the goal. The goal is to have stores that are full, that there's lots of businesses and it's very robust. So just by virtue of that alone, yes, you're going to have more people downtown. That's the plan. When that population includes people that are experiencing homelessness and staying in a emergency shelter, you may have some valid concerns about safety. And I would say to you that um, we also have concerns and we want to make you feel safe. We um, we have a great relationship with the Chatham-Kent Police Services, and um, we understand. But I don't think that you can say I would challenge you to say that every person experiencing homelessness is violent or is going to be panhandling or is going to be inappropriate any more than anybody else is. So if you have concerns, if you have concerns right now, I would like to hear about them. Chatham Hope Haven has actually been open for the last 12 months as a day program, and we've had over 12,000 people in 12 months. And I have not heard any increase in levels of crime or people being afraid to go to their vehicles or to go shopping during that time. So I guess I would say that the concerns are valid and we hear them, but we have to be reasonable too.
And I'm glad you mentioned some of the work that Hope Haven has already been doing over the past 12 months, being open with the day program and now adding this additional evening program and night program into the work. Laura, can you kind of explain to those who are watching us right now, what does the day program look like? But more importantly, what is that evening program going to look like for individuals who are utilizing your services?
Right now, so Hope Haven closed its overnight program at the beginning of the pandemic. It was just a decision that we made because we weren't 100% sure that we could guarantee anybody's safety, and that is our concern, is we want people to be safe. So, with a pandemic that we had limited information about and limited PPE, we said we can't operate this responsibly. So we decided to close. At the same time, the municipality was opening its emergency shelter, so that was working. What happened and what we realized right away was that people didn't have anywhere to go during the daytime if they were downtown, as many of these folks, as all of these folks are natives to this area. They aren't arriving here. We aren't bringing them here. There's no airplane that drops off people experiencing homelessness into Chatham-Kent. So there people are naturally going where they're used to, and so they were downtown anyways, and they didn't have any. There was no restaurants were open. Tim Hortons was closed. They didn't have anywhere to just meet their very basic needs. So we opened a daytime program because we wanted to respond to that, to give people a place to use the bathroom, to have a shower, to do their laundry. And so at that time we opened for 3 days a week, and we operated until very cold weather last year in February. And when things got to be super cold, we were a warming center overnight, and then we maintained a 7-day-a-week daytime operation. So what that means is that people that are experiencing homelessness or have unstable housing, they can come and use our shower, our telephone, our internet. They can use the bathroom. They can have a meal, and they can get some just emergency basic things like emergency clothes and emergency food.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, that history is, I think, a really important point to add to this conversation. Thank you so much, Lori, for doing that. And I know Polly kind of spoke to some of the services, employment and social services done in general, and we'll be bringing in this partnership. The evening component, Lori, that Hope Haven is looking to restart up. Can you speak a little bit to that as well, just before we jump into some more of your questions?
Sure, and I can fill. I have to tell you though, it's kind of I have two answers for this question because there really are two separate things, kind of going on or potentially going on. So when we were open before, we were staffed 100% by volunteers, and I can tell you, or I'm probably not telling anybody anything they don't know, to think that things have changed, and there has kind of been an evolution of this work in the last couple of years as people's mental health and people's struggle with addiction has changed, has grown in general, the population, not necessarily people experiencing homelessness, just everybody. And so, although volunteers are very valuable and they still play a really critical role in what Hope Haven does, we have been, through a partnership with the municipality already, been able to offer paid positions, and those are really important positions because they come with just a little bit more training and a little bit. It just changes things when people are employees. So the previous program was staffed by volunteers. The program that we are hoping will evolve out of this partnership, and I'm going to let Josh speak more to that,
Sure.
just because it's a little bit. It's still we're still developing it, but it certainly will be housing focused, and it certainly will have all of those things tied to it to keep people moving through. Because realistically, if all of these things happen and we have the same 27 people in those emergency beds and they're not moving anywhere, well, we really haven't done anything. For 27 people, we've done something, but for the 27 people that maybe are coming into this, we can't help them, and then it's kind of all for naught. So the reason that I say it's two separate things is because Hope Haven always intended to be open overnight. Our closure overnight was kind of a response that was necessary in the moment. But as we're all so happy to know, our COVID is kind of slowly inching into the rearview mirror, and as restrictions lift, that means that we are going to be able to do that again. What it will look like is going to depend on a lot of things. This partnership will allow us to really stay housing focused, to keep paid staff, and to move people through and out of the emergency shelter system.
That is excellent to hear, and that housing focus is really an important piece. I'm glad you made that as that connection point of, yes, we might have 27 beds to help people that one evening, but if they're not moving on to housing, there's 27 more who need those beds too, and they're not getting that support and services.
Right.
Right along that line of thought, Hope Haven being located downtown, we have a viewer question. I'm going to invite Josh to join us for this conversation as well. Uh, the viewer asks, please tell us how expanding the location of Hope Haven is geared to local amenities. For example, there's no grocery store downtown. And Josh, you can jump in on this question, share your thoughts, and I'd like to hear something from Lori as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I think it points to the difficulty with finding locations for services like this, because it's not a great issue. As I've shared with others, I would much rather be talking about supportive housing programs and programs that prevent homelessness, but it's a reality that our society is facing. With respect to amenities, when we did enumeration this year, so we went out in the community and spoke to those currently experiencing homelessness. One of the questions we asked is, if there is emergency housing, what services should it be close to? What I'll share is that grocery stores isn't one of the amenities that typically comes up with, and I think it points to the sad reality that the funds available to those who are currently homeless are pretty scarce. So with respect to Hope Haven and services that are nearby, we do have the Salvation Army Food Bank, which is right around the corner. The mental health network that delivers breakfast is probably another 50 meters past that. In the other direction, we have Outreach for Hunger. We also have Access Open Minds in the downtown core. We are looking at having case managers in, with a housing hub that will also provide that service. There's also the library. So access to electronics, the internet has become essential, but cell phones and data plans are far beyond reach for this community. So although certainly there isn't a grocery store nearby, there are the services that, at least from our conversations with those that access Hope Haven or right now the CKR program, there are services that they do use that brings them into the area.
Great to hear, Josh. I mean, it is the downtown. Yes, it is. There are a great many businesses down there, but there are also a great many services and supports that we might not even think of as services and supports down there. So I'm really glad you mentioned the public library, for example, and that digital divide we are starting to see, and that has been a huge issue throughout the pandemic the past 2 years. Is the internet is where a lot of things are done nowadays, and unfortunately, without a cell phone with data or access to Wi-Fi, it's very difficult to access a lot of supports and services. Lori, before I'm going to invite Lori back in as well, and Josh can stay with us. Lori, kind of the same question to you that was put forth, just to reread it for you. Given the needs in the community, please tell us how expand the location of Hope Haven is geared to the local amenities. As for example, there's no grocery store downtown. So I want to hear your take on this as well, Lori.
Okay, and it is a good question, and I would say that for the folks that I speak with regularly at Hope Haven, I'm not sure that access to a grocery store is high on their list of immediate needs, and it's not because they don't want to buy groceries, but we're talking about folks that don't have housing, that don't have the ability to. They don't have a can opener, and if they did, they don't have a stove. So while if you're talking about access to a grocery store specifically for transitional housing, for income supported housing, I would say absolutely. But when we're talking about a temporary somewhere that you're going to stay temporarily to stay alive, to be able to get the things that you need to get out of homelessness, I'm just not sure that that's an amenity that you need easy and close access to.
It's one of those pieces, I think, Lori, where for different groups of people, supports and services mean something different sometimes. And I think both of you would agree sometimes that sometimes when we think of supports and services, we think of an institution or a specific organization. But sometimes supports and services is just that trusting relationship you build with people. That really is the foundation to getting people through to where they need to go. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Laura, you want to say one last
No, I
one?
was just going to say 100%. Yeah.
Josh, Lori, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it back over to Polly now, who's going to answer another viewer question for us. Polly, I have a question that's come in around affordable housing or affordable housing builds in the community. What they're looking to understand is, given the needs in this community, and it's clear we need it, when is more public geared income housing going to be built?
That's a fantastic question. And something that is very much on the minds of municipal councillors and staff. Ray Harper is the Director of Social Housing for the municipality of Chatham-Kent, and he couldn't be here today. I think he might be joining us tomorrow at noon, but he gave me a nice list. So if it's okay, I'm going to read it. But I think it's important to know what's going to be happening, what's coming up in different communities, and there is quite a lot coming up. I should mention there's different kinds of affordable housing. There is social housing that's rent geared to income, but there is also what we call affordable housing that developers, private developers can build. They receive an incentive from municipalities. There's a combination, I believe, of provincial and municipal dollars. And they offer reduced rents. So it's different than, say, I'm on a very low income, my rent is only a couple $100 a month. These ones would be a set rate, which is based on 80% of the market rate in the community. So they might be more like $800 a month. So that's what we call affordable housing. And then we also have social housing, RGI, rent geared to income. So with that, some of the things that are happening. The most recent completed and occupied housing developments are there's units at 48 Fifth Street in Chatham, 28 units occupied. Some of those are supportive housing units that we actually partner in employment and social services. There is Villa View in Blenheim, where 7 affordable units for seniors were created, giving priority to Canadian veterans as well. And that was just recently occupied. Move-ins happened. 45 Michener, 12 units with rent subsidy agreements. And there's also developments in construction. So at 14 Dolson, 22 units of affordable housing are offered, and that's one of those ones through a developer. But the applications all still go through Chatham-Kent Housing Services, and the occupancy expected for that building, and that includes some accessible units, if my memory serves me right, is September 2022. On Wellington Street, there is 4 communal bedrooms and 2 units. It's a supportive housing under a referral agreement with Community Living. And that has occupancy expected for November of this year. George Street in Ridgetown, this is a bigger one that's pretty exciting, will be 22 one-bedroom units of affordable housing offered through application, again, through Chatham-Kent Housing Services. Occupancy expected 2023, so next year. 42 South End Crescent, 10 units. Supportive communal living, again, by Community Living Chatham-Kent. Occupancy April 2023. And then this one, 99 McNaughton, there's a large build that is from a grant, from a substantial grant that's coming from the federal government under the Rapid Housing Initiative. That was a hard-won grant that will build 27 units for seniors with occupancy of hopefully January 2023. There's ongoing efforts in affordable housing developments in Chatham-Kent. They're looking at more units going in. These are in planning, not at the construction stage. Land in Blenheim for family units, in Wallaceburg for a combination mixed market affordable affordable units on some municipal land. And back in Chatham, again, mixed market affordable units. So there's some planning in hopes of building there. So there is a lot, but yes, we could certainly use a lot more of units that are affordable for all people that have a more modest income. You don't even need to have a low income to need affordable now. You need just $2,000 a month rent or $1,200 a month rent is too much for most people in Chatham-Kent. So it's important, but these are all there's a lot happening.
Absolutely, it sounds like a lot is happening. That is a significant amount of building that I think has ramped up over the past couple of years. We've invested a lot locally and from the province and feds into affordable housing. If I'm not mistaken, there. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's really interesting that we have builds not only just in Chatham, but this is going across the entire community. So there's a recognition that affordable housing is needed in all parts of Chatham-Kent.
There is. And, there's a lot of different ways to achieve affordable housing and to have it. But you do need land. You need affordable land to build affordable housing on it. You do need capital. You need money. Um, and yeah, that comes from somewhere, right? And obviously government money comes from taxes. So there has to be the willingness of the taxpayer to pay for these things. However, there's a lot of, I don't know, this is not my area of expertise, but there, in talking with Ray Harper from Housing Services, there are models where these units could be built, especially affordable housing units, and they'd run like a nonprofit where the revenue offsets the cost. So, I think there's possibilities out there to explore
Wow. And
that are being explored.
that sounds fantastic. I mean, and that's kind of I can't remember the saying off the top of my head, but it's kind of like when your kind of back is against the wall, those creative ideas really come out, and we're seeing that not just locally but across the country. Really creative ways to rapidly build affordable housing in communities. And I have to echo you as a renter myself. I mean, when I'm going to the grocery store and paying $12.99 for 3 peppers, it is a challenge out there.
Right. Yeah.
It's really good to hear the amount of affordable housing being built in the community. Thank you so much, Polly, for giving us that knowledge and that information that's really critical to this conversation. And so, Polly, I'm going to thank you for that, and I'm going to turn it back over. I'm actually going to invite Mike to join us with a couple questions here. Mike, welcome to the call. I'm sorry that we've been chatting on housing and other things. I'm so glad you're able to join us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Mike, we have a couple questions for you that I think would really could use your expertise. A question we had from some of the comments, are there supposed to be more security cameras installed downtown for security and theft issues?
Yes, we will be installing some cameras in partnership with the municipality. They've been delayed to this point simply because of parts. We're waiting for parts. That's the easiest way to put it, but we're optimistic that we'll be installing the cameras early summer.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to hear. And with some of the noted concerns from some patrons downtown, some of the themes we're seeing is potentially, if we have this program come downtown, are we going to see an increase in police presence or patrols downtown? I think is a lot of people's common thought. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Sure. Well, I guess for us, the proximity of Hope Haven is, I guess, is to our benefit because it's close to our station. Should there be concerns that citizens have. Aside from that, with the installation, the soon-to-be installation of CCTV cameras, we believe that will help. We're also increasing the number of trained officers for bicycle patrol. We had that in the works prior to becoming aware of this program. So we intend to deploy officers on bicycles, which is super helpful in a downtown core area of really any city. The cameras we just mentioned, there's a nice segue. We have a security camera registry. So citizens in Chatham-Kent, whether you have cameras at your house or at your business, can register with us on our website, ckpolice.com. We don't get access to your cameras. It's nothing like that. but it simply lets us know that a business or a resident has a camera. So if we need to investigate something that happened in that particular neighborhood, we're aware that you have a camera, and then we can come and speak to you about possibly obtaining footage. It's free to sign up. We certainly encourage any business, not just in downtown, but anywhere in Chatham-Kent, as well as residents, to sign up for that registry, simply so we're aware that they have a camera. It's a useful tool for investigations. We've previously conducted, they're called CPTED audits. So CPTED stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And essentially we have a trained officer come to a business and examine whether it's a layout inside a store. Oftentimes, I'll give an example of a convenience store. They have lots of billboards covering their windows, so it makes it difficult to see in at night or at any point in time. So we have discussions about how businesses can maybe rearrange furniture to make their environment safer. It could include installing cameras, or sometimes planters outside could obstruct views, that kind of thing. So we did an audit for all the businesses downtown previously, and we're offering an audit for Hope Haven as well, and that will provide recommendations for that organization to perhaps improve that particular area to make it target hardened, if you will, so they're not as susceptible to crime. One thing I'd like to mention with, and I'm not taking a position on where our homeless should be located. I don't think that's really the role for police. I'd just like to offer, we're talking about, or we seem to be spending some time talking on what's the concerns of our citizens and perhaps the safety of our citizens. I think we need to consider the safety of those vulnerable people that are homeless. So if we were to put them in a rural area, which often comes up as a topic of conversation, oftentimes you're lacking things like sidewalks, adequate lighting. They tend to be higher speed zone traffic areas. And then, of course, as Josh talked about, those people won't have access to services. So while I'm not suggesting that any location is ideal, because there's always going to be a person, I think we can agree that there's always going to be people that, sort of don't want emergency housing in their area, the NIMBY syndrome. I think it's important that we provide resources to those vulnerable people that need it. So as far as police presence goes, yes, we will have a police presence. We often have officers driving through regardless. We do that now, and we'll continue to do that in the future.
Mike, I really appreciated your last pieces of comments there, and thank you for that explanation about the use of the camera registry, as well as sort of the philosophy behind Chatham-Kent Police in regards to this move. And I appreciate your thoughts in terms of, that rural versus urban, or where is it going to be located? There's no matter really where it's going to be located, there are going to be challenges faced, and we have to keep both sides in the thought process here. Mike, Chatham-Kent Police is not just here to deal with when a crime happens. There's also a preventative approach as well to a lot of the work that you're doing. I'm wondering if you're able to speak, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but are you able to speak a little bit to the preventative approaches that Chatham-Kent Police take in regards to the community and community safety and well-being?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. It is. We try to do our best to educate the public on a variety of public safety matters. So we have a dedicated public information officer. We have a community mobilization unit that does primarily these CPTED audits, but also handles other types of, I'll say, social disorder calls. We have a mobile crisis team that involves a sworn police officer paired with a crisis nurse, and they deal with a lot of our mental health calls. So to answer your question in a very, very narrow view is sort of difficult to do. Sure. We want to empower, so we try to educate people to keep themselves safe. Obviously, our role is to assist in that, but in any city, anywhere in the world, we can't be everywhere at every moment. So things like locking your cars at night, locking your doors at night, home security cameras, home security alarm systems. These are all things that people can do on their own. Like at some point, people have to take a little bit of ownership for their own personal safety as well, because we just, any police service in the world can't do it all for them, right? So we try to, we're embedded in this community, whether it's volunteer boards and sports organizations and various committees and roundtables, and we certainly want to be a partner collaborating with the municipality and community stakeholders on this issue.
Absolutely, and it's clear that Chatham-Kent Police is deeply caring about this community and does exceptional work in many different areas to ensure the safety and security of our citizens here, and of course well-being and protection in general. Thank you very much, Mike, for answering some of those questions. I'm sure there'll be more coming in, so stick by, and we'll have more questions coming your way. Thanks so much, Mike, and I'm going to ask Josh to pop back in as well. Josh, we have another viewer question for you. What about all the individuals who are experiencing homelessness? That are already in the community and they're out and about in the streets asking for money or what we might call panhandling. Do you think this move is going to just increase this in the downtown or across our community?
It's a great question. I'm going to answer this in two parts. So the first part is, will this move increase panhandling in the community? No, I don't think so. Will poverty and the increase in rents and the stagnant income increase panhandling in the community? Quite likely. With respect to the move is an attempt to address a situation that is growing. Homelessness, though, is going to grow regardless of whether or not there's a shelter in the community. As we've kind of discussed before, and we've discussed it at reports to council and other community presentation, there are very large system changes that need to occur. We need substantial increases in affordable housing, and we need incomes for those at the lowest end, especially those on social assistance, to increase to really have an impact on the homelessness that we're seeing. So we certainly are hopeful to do our best to help those in need, but as we've mentioned, these are emergency band-aids. Emergencies cost more than preventive work. We are hopeful that someday soon there will be far more positive announcements that we can make with respect to upstream programming, changes to other systems that will have a larger impact and hopefully get us to where we were several years ago when we were seeing meaningful reductions in homelessness. And in fact, prior to the pandemic, getting close and having conversations about how can we reach functional zero. We'll never end homelessness completely. There will always be emergencies. But if we can have programming that responds fast enough and helps enough people, then those who are homeless will be homeless much shorter and get access to the services that they desperately need.
Very well said, Josh. And if I can say this and check me if I'm off base here, but it's the plan in place and moving forward with all this work. It is a reaction to the huge increase in homelessness that has been happening over the past 2 years because of COVID-19 pandemics. And that increase is not because people and systems and organizations have not been working very hard to try and house people. These are very big, complex issues: lack of affordable housing, challenges with access to money at the end of the day, and other challenges in communities that are very complex and take a long time to address. And so this plan is not, it really is pulling the best of the best resources together to try and help as many people as possible get into housing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And to take it further, prior to this, we did very much rely on local motels because of the situation was currently we are experiencing in the community. To put it bluntly, when we look at the motels right now and trying to access more rooms, many of them are regularly full every night with low-income individuals trying to seek the services or a temporary stay because that's what they can afford. So we do have to adjust our response, but again, based on the resources that we need. And I do have to commend Lori for really her support over the last 2 years throughout the pandemic, and Hope Haven's willingness to step up to explore this and see how can they take the services that they've offered in the past, but they're very much focused on how can we make this into a program that finds long-term solutions, but then also respects the needs of our neighbors. We need this to fit in whatever area it would be, similar to other programs that we operate. So.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for answering that question. I think you actually gave us a great segue into another viewer question that's come up. So I'm going to say goodbye to you for now, and I'm going to invite Lori and Polly to pop back in for one more question. I'm sure we'll have more multiple questions are still coming in, so we're excited to answer them. But here's another question for you both. There's agreement in the comments that there is a need for housing supports in the community. But some feel that the downtown location is just not the right place, as it could have negative impacts on attracting people from out of town as customers and patrons of local businesses. Do you have any comments to that question or that viewer question?
Yes, thanks, Phil. We this most of this same group spoke with some members from downtown, BIA and Chamber, local area residents last night in an in-person um, meeting. And, this has all been very last minute. So it's been hard for people because it is all happening so fast. It was really important for us to get the information out and start talking with people and start to hear their concerns. So yeah, there's definitely those concerns. Um, and so that's why we're having these consultations. We have a second meeting with that group coming up March 21st to try to build on what can we do about these concerns, because there are things that can be done. Because we don't have a program written in stone, we have flexibility to, determine what hours. So when people come in or go, that's not maybe a busy time downtown. Maybe there's some beautification things we can do, security things we can do. There's a lot of opportunities, but we want to know what the downtown and also the community, which is why we're here, what they want to see. What they want to see from Hope Haven. Hope Haven's kept the property very tidy, very nice for some time. With this partnership, can we take it up a notch? As for the people we serve a wide variety of people. We have seniors, we have youth, I think the average age is typically around 39. We have people who are working, who are not working, some people that have substance use addiction, some people who just use substances, some people, we have every little bit of everybody coming, but a lot of the folks you wouldn't even know that they're homeless. Sometimes the people that we think are homeless aren't actually homeless. So sometimes the people that have, severe addictions, or they're sleeping rough somewhere, they're not necessarily staying at Hope Haven or Travelodge or anywhere else. So, you can't kind of paint it as some of the problems that we have downtown and sadly throughout Chatham and Chatham-Kent, with petty crimes, feeling unsafe, vandalism. It's a real problem for businesses and homeowners alike. And we do have to all work together to make it better for everybody. But this is just part of the solution. If we don't, if people fall farther into unwellness, further into addictions, further into homelessness, further, that's just working against the issue. The other thing, I've gone off on a tangent, but um, we're pretty passionate about this work. But beyond that, we are talking about human beings who can walk and go wherever they want, as do we. But there have been communities where days like, well, I'll let Lori talk about her services because she sees a lot of people, and there's a lot to talk about there that has gone really, really well. But and we don't want to say this is a panacea, but it is not uncommon for shelters to be in downtowns, even beautiful, well-established downtowns, because that's where the churches are. That's where the soup kitchens and feeding programs are. And that's who offers to do the work. So that isn't uncommon. I think you see that in almost all big cities. Some of the newer examples, and we're doing some sort of research, we're doing research on this to see what's working in other communities in downtowns. But for example, Byward Market, I read an article in the city of Ottawa, that big construction, there was a lot of pushback on that, but it has solved some problems in their beautiful downtown area. Now we all know they've had some other problems down there, but it has definitely solved some of those issues that they've experienced. There has been Timmins, the city of Timmins has undergone a lot of things. So that's a town that we definitely want to speak more to about what they've gone through, and they've resolved a lot of issues by being down there in the downtown. So, there's a lot more work to be done, but we're very committed to doing it. We love our community. We love our downtown. So it's important.
Well, thank you very much, Polly, for going on that, for getting on that soapbox. I think it was really important. Everything you just said was very important. It's one of those pieces where innovations in other cities can potentially work well here. So it's great to hear that you're doing that research into it. And you're absolutely right. The people who are accessing Hope Haven, if not just in our community, are other neighbors. They're people that are just like us. They're neighbors to us. They're people that we live with every day. And yes, there are challenges that we have in this community. That being said, they are our neighbors. We can't control what they are up to. And I think it's about coming together as a community. And I think that's a great segue into what Lori is probably going to say. So, Lori, I'd love for you to hear your thoughts. Do you want me to reread that question for you just in
Sure.
case?
So, yeah, please do.
Sure. There's agreements in the comments that there is a need for housing supports in the community, but some feel that maybe the downtown is not the best location because it could bring a negative impact to attracting, customers or patrons to downtown businesses. Do you have any comments to that?
I really do, Phil. And I do know that people are concerned about bringing new business and people accessing their businesses, if this is going to be impacted in a negative way. And I guess my response to that would be, in addition to everything that uh, Polly has said, is that I would suggest that businesses will be affected much worse by the establishment of encampments in the downtown. And we have not seen that happen. I can't say that is the alternative, but we all watch the news and we all see what's going on in other communities. And I think that, as Josh said earlier, that it's very likely that homelessness, at least in the short term, is going to increase. So if we aren't offering a place where people be received with dignity and receive the things that they need to get out of the elements, um, there very likely could be an encampment anywhere. And when folks are at Hope Haven, then they're people can access them, like the services that they need can find them, and that can work to everybody's advantage. People don't aspire to be homeless, so but when life turns out that way, and that's where they are for right at this moment, an encampment or sleeping outside of your downtown business is going to be a lot worse than a shelter that's working really hard to be temporary and to help people find solutions for their lives.
Very well said. That concept of centrality, or bring it into the central, services might exist all over the place, and instead of having to have people travel to access services, it's welcome here. This is a place where you can access what you need, how you need it, when you need it. So very well said, Lauren. I think it's the challenge really at the end of the day is recognizing that as a community we can either pretend that this is not a concern and push this off to the rural areas, or push this off to the outskirts and say, oh, out of sight, out of mind. But frankly, this is a challenge that our entire community is facing. And why not making sure that as a community we are trying to support it the best way we can? This sounds like a pretty darn good solution for housing programming through Hope Haven. And that actually brings me to another viewer question for you, Lori. Is can you clarify? We've been going on for the past. You said for the past 12 months you've had a day program running or operating here, and now we're potentially adding the evening or the overnight component to it. Can you clarify, will the day the day supports and programming be available continuing, or is that going to stop, and how does that whole process work?
That's a great question, Phil. We kind of fell on the day programming, as I said at the very beginning, was never a plan of ours. We just kind of fell into it. And as I also said, 12,000, we have had 12,000 visits in 12 months. That is just an astonishing number. And what it has told us is that this programming is needed. So that is not, the day program is not going to go anywhere. That's something that we're going to continue with regardless of what happens on Monday when this is voted on by council, regardless of anything, the day program will continue. Um, as far as what the hours are going to look like, and will Hope Haven previously was open 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then people had to leave, and like those are things that we're working on, and we want to hear from the community, and we want to know what these things are not in stone. The day program will be there. That is in stone. Hope Haven fully intends to reopen again as an overnight shelter. That is in stone. The rest of the pieces of it are moving and will largely depend on the what people say and how we can best be really great neighbors.
And I think that's what we started this conversation with back at the beginning of the hour, which was, we're here for any comments and questions, but we also are here for any of those solution pieces. There's a lot of opportunity to have your voice heard in terms of how this could potentially operate in terms of timing and other pieces. But I'm glad you mentioned that the day program is not going anywhere,
Yep.
and you want to reopen it as that evening overnight shelter, which is not going anywhere. So that's
Right.
great to hear. That's great to hear. I'm going to add Josh into this piece as well, because I think Josh has a couple pieces he wanted to add. Josh, before you jump in, just to remind you of the question, a viewer was asking for clarification around the proposed overnight shelter. Is the plan for it to be similar to the model Hope Haven has had in the past, where participants are required to leave and return, or will the day program continue? Lori spoke to this a little bit already, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, perfect, and thank you for the question. No, our intention is not to um, have the same model as the past, and I think the same model as the past, to be fair to Hope Haven at that time, was based on what funding they had available. To be fair, though, at the same time, what the specific hours and what the specific program will look like, it would be really difficult for me to say specifically because we haven't heard from the community. We want their input. We are looking to have lived experience also provide us some details because we need to hear from them, how can we best help you? And we also know if we have a lot of staff that have been delivering this type of service in a couple of different scenarios. So we'll be speaking with them further to develop a final model that will hopefully be able to have that impact we're looking for. We went this route because, of course, throughout the pandemic, we reported to council on this growing issue a number of times. We wanted to share with council, and we've committed to council to share with them that we would come back to them before pursuing any plans in depth. So what we're looking for come Monday is their input on whether we'll be able to proceed further on this partnership. But as we have kind of said, this would be the starting step. So there's going to be a lot of work that we need to proceed with before we can say that the program's ready to go. So those will be the conversations to come, depending on kind of some next steps.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. That concept that a lot of things are still up in the air. There's still some questions to be answered. There's still some logistics to be figured out here. So it looks like what we're seeing here is if you have any questions, you're able to submit them to ckess@chatham-kent.ca, and any questions will be returned, I'm assuming within a couple business days, with the best available answer at that time. Josh, you want to speak a little bit more to how people can get in touch for further questions if they have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ckss at chathamkent.com is or .ca is the best route. Polly and myself will certainly be responding to those. We're also available by phone at the 519-360-1998. So any questions, any concerns, any suggestions, please let us know. We have committed to also keep these conversations going. So although we're speaking today and we'll be speaking tomorrow, as Polly mentioned, March 21st we'll also be returning with the BIA to have further conversations, and we'll look at other ways that we can consult with the community. If this moves forward, or if Hope Haven moves forward on this, I do expect that regardless, we will need some community conversations. This is a community issue, and regardless of this one program, there will be other suggestions, concerns, questions, comments that we want to hear, and we want to take that into account.
That's fantastic to hear. And being that it is 7:34, We do a couple more questions coming in, so maybe we'll have these as the last two questions, it appears, and then we'll probably wrap up for the evening. There is a question here from a viewer, and they were just wondering: Is this Is this only employment and social services, or are there multiple other departments in the municipality involved in this project?
Yeah, so we do expect, like a lot of the projects that we work on, this would be a municipal project. So there are certain elements where public health are experts, and we rely on them for that. There would be elements where building services are certainly the experts, so we'll rely on them for that. I wouldn't say that's just a municipal thing though. So as a partnership with the municipality, this would give us the opportunity for staff to access CK Cares programming. So that's programming that's offered by the Salvation Army and CMHA, the House of Soccer Scene, and the Chatham-Kent Women's Center, so that we can quickly refer people to those appropriate programs as well. I know Polly mentioned earlier our commitment with the Chatham-Kent health teams and the work that they've done to assist those in need at the Travel Lodge. So this will definitely be a municipal collaboration, but I'm hopeful to take that further. And I know from speaking with community partners, they see this need quite frequently as well. I'm sure you can imagine it's very difficult to discharge someone from the hospital if there's nowhere for them to go to. That's not going to assist their well-being. It's very difficult to discharge somebody who's doing really well from a treatment program if there's nowhere for them to go. So there's a variety of needs across the community, and there's a variety of partners that are committed to making this or as well as our other programs as successful as we can.
Well said. It is a community initiative. This is the community coming together to benefit the individuals who are really struggling with accessing housing. So very well said. Thank you so much, Josh, for answering that question. And the last question is actually going to be going to Lori. So Lori, do you mind rejoining me one last time here?
Sure.
Lori, I have one last question for you, and it is: Will clients who are accessing Hope Haven, will they be expected to attend community kitchens or food banks or soup kitchens for their food for their nutritional needs, or will this all be addressed within Hope Haven?
That's a great question, and I can honestly tell you that I'm just not sure, and I'm not really trying to evade anything, but because we're still working out the times and how what is going to work best for the clients for the community. Until we really know that, it's hard to say. So I don't have an answer today, but as this hopefully continues to grow, and if things are approved and we start to get working really quickly and busily, that information will be available, and there'll be more conversations around it. People's nutritional needs will absolutely be taken care of. I'm just not sure by who or how that's going to look
And then it goes back to what Josh was saying about that. We're a community of services coming together. We're a community as a whole coming together to support the individuals who are accessing Hope Haven. And uh, I think what's important to understand about Hope Haven is that Hope Haven, and Lori, you are your own nonprofit, if I'm not mistaken, your own nonprofit charity.
We are a registered charity, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. The reason I ask is sometimes I know there was a decision potentially going to council for further discussion and debate, and so the question then becomes if the municipality is unable to partner in this in some way, is Hope Haven going to continue with this approach moving forward? And that when I say this approach, I mean the overnight shelter component of your work.
You know what, Phil? There is a need. We've seen through the enumeration process and just with our own eyes, as everybody else has in Chatham-Kent, that the need is growing. It's not going anywhere. And um, I guess my short answer is yes. As long as there is a need, Hope Haven has kind of initially and against all odds. We opened 5 years ago, and we will open overnight again. We would really love to do it with resources that allow for paid staff and additional services, and keep us as housing focused as absolutely possible. But if we don't have the funding to do that, we will find a way. Yes, absolutely, that is the plan.
Well, thank you very much, Lori, for that confirmation. It is really heartwarming to see that there are supports going to continue regardless of how this moves forward, there are supports. And even if the partnership is not coming together, that is okay, because you're going to continue work. And of course, Employment and Social Services is going to continue theirs as well. And so we will end the conversation there for in terms of answering questions. But I'm going to invite actually yourself, Polly, Josh, and Mike to rejoin us as a full call here, because what I'd like to do is just turn it over to you all to give a minute each. I'll give you all a minute to sort of just wrap up your thoughts on the conversation we've had today. Lori, you're the first screen I have in front of me. So Lori, tell us in a minute, what do you want the community to be aware of leaving this call?
I want the community to know that there is a partnership now between the municipality and Hope Haven, and that partnership has been growing, and it has grown because we've learned. I think everybody has learned an awful lot about homelessness in the last couple of years. We are all committed to making this successful for everybody, for the clients that access the program, for the community, for the neighbors. For the staff, and for the volunteers. So that's what I want you to know, that everybody here is committed to that. We really do want your feedback. It's very important, because this need isn't going to go away just because we want it to. Because let me tell you something, I don't know if anybody wants it to go away as badly as I do. I really do.
It's clear the passion is there, Lori. Thank you so much for those last comments. Polly, you're next on screen. Can I ask you to share a little bit about what's the takeaway from today that you want people to take away from this or walk away from this conversation?
Yeah, I'd like to really build on what Lori says. The approach that we're proposing is the most cost-effective, robust program we can offer. We are looking at a free building with all the funding we have going to services to help people get better and to be housed. So that is why we are committed to making it work. And we are here for, we will be trying to work with the community as long as they will work with us. So we really want to see this happen. Together, we're better, it's stronger, and we will be working with other partners in the community as well.
Perfect. Thank you so very much, Polly. Great words. Mike, you're next on my screen. What's the takeaway message you'd like people to walk away with from yourself on this call?
Thank you. From a policing perspective, we take no position on the location of housing for people. And we recognize this is an immensely complicated issue to tackle when we talk about homelessness. Our profession is not going to solve that alone. We're not adequately equipped to do that, but we're very keenly interested in being part of the conversation and helping with the public safety in our community. So that's as sort of succinct as I can be.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Mike, for your comments. And last but certainly not least, Josh, what again is that takeaway message you want people to walk away with from today's conversation?
I'm going to take a different approach because I think Lori and Polly certainly did a great job with that. What I'm going to leave it with, because certainly we focused on emergency housing tonight, is that there's also a lot of people in the community that want to help in different ways. So if that's you and you're wondering, how can I help with this, feel free to contact Lori Bailey, the United Way, Employment and Social Services. If you're a landlord and you want to hear more about our services, please give us a call as well. We need housing to get people back on their feet. We have employment programs. We have holistic case management that will help them with those other services. And we have great partnerships with other community agencies. This is going to take a community to solve. It's not a pretty issue. It's immensely complicated. And those who are homeless, unfortunately, they have fallen through so many different systems. So we recognize that we need to relook at that, but we also need support and we need some help. So if you're interested in learning more, if you also have those questions, you have concerns, please let us know, give us a call, and we'll do our best to give you answers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Josh. And as for those who are viewing, you can see the email ckess@chatham-kent.ca, or the phone number being 519-360-1998. Thank you very much to all four of you for joining us tonight for this conversation. And thank you to everyone for the amazing viewer questions we received throughout the past hour. We're going to be back here with another group of individuals tomorrow to keep this discussion going. Many of the same faces you'll be seeing. We're back tomorrow on the Facebook Live at noon. and we're excited to see you there. And if you're interested, as Josh was saying, if you're interested in getting in touch with Hope Haven for further help or support, you can reach out to Hope Haven at 519-351-4010. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.